welcome everybody to Shadow Word Podcast, episode 6, I think. This is the last episode before the launch of 10.1, so we'll kind of cover a little bit of what's coming with that and kind of thoughts. Today I'm joined by two lovely guests. I have Ellipsis and Twicks with me. We're going to talk about all things 10.1, a little bit about the raid, and then hopefully dive into Mythic Plus as well, because I know between the three of us, especially you two, we've run quite a lot of keys as Shadow and 10.0, so we'll see how see what 10.1 looks like. So yeah,
I don't want to check how many keys I've done this season.
yeah, I know Radar.io does
really
that
don't.
recap thing, and I saw it, and I'm like, yeah, I don't want to share this information. I'm good. I'm gonna keep it close.
How many times could you have watched Lord of the Rings?
Oh yeah, I forgot. Oh dang, I forgot. I don't know. I don't remember.
I need to check that because I have over 400 keys.
Okay, yeah, you definitely beat me.
Yeah,
I'll say mine.
like-
I have over 400.
Yeah, I also have over 400.
Okay, yeah, you guys have crushed me. Okay, good. I think I'm at like 250 or something. So yeah.
That's not even counting ones that disbanded.
Yeah, true, actually. Oh. Okay, so to formally introduce our guests, I'll go to Ellipsis first. Ellipsis, first of all, hi, how are you? And who are you?
Hello, I'm not doing very well today. I've got an ear infection. That's not very nice. But I am Ellipsis. I am a moderator on the Warcraft Priest Discord. I write the WoW head guide for Shadow Priest, and I'm raiding at a roughly World 200 level right now. And I'm also trying to push for title and various Mythic Plus things. I think I'm very, very safe title at this point. Like
You're extra safe. You're a couple 100 points safe, I think.
About 100 points safe in EU, about 150 points safe in NA.
And our second guest, new to the show, but not new to the community, Twicks. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good.
No ear infections?
Really good today. Yeah, no ear infections. Thank God. I'm Twix. I started playing Shadow Priest mainly in Dragonflight. I played it before in Shadowlands as like an off-spec. I played Priest in Shadowlands, but Shadow only in Dragonflight. I rated an XD World 20 guild. I am currently rank 10 Shadow Priest in the world in Radar.io. I was rank 1 earlier in the season, or like rank 1, rank 2-ish.
Awesome, man. Well, glad to have you guys here. We have a lot of fun stuff to cover. So I think before we go into anything super specific, we'll go to Ellipsis first just to kind of gauge, like, how does the 10.1 rework feel to you? Anything that stands out, either super positive or super negative, or just kind of general thoughts on the rework that you want to give before we get into things?
I've kind of gone back and forth on a lot of different things. Obviously, like, I think some things have got a lot worse, some things have gotten marginally better, and my general opinion towards the whole rework at the moment is it's just different.
Yeah.
It's not like it's not really solved any of the like major pressing problems the spec has. It solved some small things and then added some other problems of its own. And the damage is still there, and the performance is still there, and it not the sort of thing that's going to impact your viability in raids or Mythic Plus. It's just a slightly different way to play the spec. That's kind of all I've got to say.
Yeah, no, it's a little different. They moved some stuff around. I agree. I think every Shadow Priest rework, I think, will always leave us with, man, they could have done more, right? They could have done something different, but maybe eventually we'll get closer. I don't know, but yeah, I agree.
It feels like there's going to be another one in about 2 or 3 patches.
I think so.
Is how
That's
it feels
kind
to me.
That's how it goes, right?
Yeah, I feel like they haven't found a destination for the spec. They've just kind of meandered around a bit.
Yeah.
I need a bear rework first. But yeah, everyone's like dooming on, oh, it feels so boring to play. They're hitting a target at me.
Yeah,
Like if you're in a dungeon, you're doing a raid, there's a lot more to think about that's not your rotation, and it gives you more room to do that. Like you're doing a high key, you can put your brain power somewhere else instead of just doing the most DPS that you can.
Yeah.
Well, and that's before we even talk about optimizing Idol of Cthulhu.
Well, if we need to. But yeah, I agree. I think that's one of the nice things. Like if you've ever played a tank or a healer in Mythic Plus, I think you'll get that a little bit, where the rotations of those aren't usually very complicated, right? But what could be fun in playing those roles is all the other stuff you get to do. So yeah, totally agree that I think you don't necessarily need a rotation that's super complex and involved to have fun on a spec, right? So
I mean, that's not to say Shadow's rotation isn't bloated and
It
complex.
is a little better.
regardless.
Yeah, I was redoing the Icy Veins guide for 10.1, and I think I removed like 40% of the rotation guide, just like gone now.
Yeah,
It's
but
a lot more intuitive as well.
Most of that was just where exactly do you press Mind Spike?
Yeah, it was Mind Spike versus Mind Flay, so that's the one big thing that, as much as it's not, I think, the way it is now isn't like my favorite spot, but at least you don't have Mind Spike and Mind Flay at the same time, which was kind of confusing. I think to Twix's point, like it was not intuitive to have both, right? So yeah, removing that is nice. Obviously, I think Mind Sear was the other big reason why I removed a lot of lines of like when depressed Devouring Plague versus Mind Sear, but they decided that wasn't a good choice, I guess. So so yeah, Twix, any other thoughts on the 10.1 rework? Just kind of initial impressions or anything? I know you said this is your first expansion really playing Shadow Priest a lot. So I guess from what you've seen, in on PTR, either raid testing your keys or whatever, would you say good direction, kind of weird direction, or yeah?
Optimizing is still like a bad direction. Like playing around Yogg stacks is weird.
Yeah.
We'll get more into that later, but you can play very well by just following intuition.
Yeah.
Which is something a lot of other classes and specs do, which is good. I like it. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to read a guide to like understand how a spec plays at like a basic fundamental level, right? It should just you should be able to look at a bunch of spells, anyone that's played the game at least for a bit, and be like, oh yeah, I should do X, Y, and Z, right? And I think it's definitely gotten better.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like the big thing they've managed to remove is the decision points, like the moment-to-moment decision points of like, is this enough targets to be pressing Sear versus Devouring Plague? Yeah. Maybe I actually want to hit this target a bit more. Maybe I take the damage loss to get the priority damage. Maybe gaining the Mind Flay Insanity Psychic Link damage outweighs the Mind Sear, which is a really complicated thing to have to explain to people.
Yeah.
Or like just like those little like moment-to-moment decisions are basically gone, and you're kind of running through a relatively elaborate priority list, but it doesn't have many like crazy nuances to it.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so let's go into kind of more some of the topics we talked about ahead of time, just kind of deep dive into these. So I think overall positives, just I think as we were kind of getting to, the rotation is just easier in a lot of ways. It kind of somewhat plays itself depending on what you're doing. There's not a whole lot of things that you can take either talent wise or build wise that super change what you're doing, which I do think is better for new players. So yeah, I think the first thing to talk about with kind of the easier rotation is Distorted Reality. So I don't know, I guess Ellipsis will go to you first and kind of your thoughts on Distorted Reality. So for those of you guys that don't know, give some context. Distorted Reality is a new Devouring Plague talent that makes it last twice as long, and then they compensate you with extra damage as well. So this does kind of open up a lot of, for new players hitting the spec or in multi-target scenarios, this talent will get used. But yeah, Ellipsis, what are your kind of general thoughts on what they've done with this talent?
It reminds me of a talent that we used to have a very long time ago that I feel like might cause PTSD for some people in the audience.
No, you can say.
Although you didn't play the game at this time.
It was an alt for me at that time. It was like WoD, wasn't it?
Yes, it was Warlords. It reminds me of a talent called Void Entropy, which is a talent very similar to Distorted Reality in that it gave you like an extra dot that did a decent chunk of damage over a very, very long time, and Devouring Plague refreshed it. And the gameplay with that talent was to kind of put it on things that were going to live a very, very long time, and try to move your Devouring Plague around to keep refreshing it and juggling it on lots of targets.
Mm-hmm.
It fell absolutely, completely flat on its face, because there was no realistic scenario where you would want a 60-second duration dot.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think this version of it has much better chance of being usable, and the council scenario where you kind of actively want to try and move your Devouring Plagues around and spread them is somewhere that this could be useful. It also kind of makes a bit of gameplay that I guess maybe some people have been wanting from Shadow in this iteration with Devouring Plague back. Of like, shouldn't I be moving my Devouring Plagues around to maximize my mastery? Yeah. And like, previously, no, because it didn't last long enough and you didn't generate enough of them to make it realistically viable. But at 12 seconds, yeah, you can kind of do that now. And multi-dotting with Devouring Plague in scenarios where you have lots of targets that are fairly beefy and gonna last a long time, it's a kind of pretty good.
Yeah, I think it was like 80% uptime, like 80-85% uptime on 2 target, which is pretty good.
Yeah, that's real. Yeah, that's cool. That's also a good skill testing thing because like it's not easy to do that, and it's a lot of target swapping, and it's a lot of practice goes into doing that well. The only thing I'm like slightly concerned about it is it replaces it kind of effectively replaces Devouring Plague in terms of the function it has on single target. It makes the damage from that a lot worse, and you kind of do feel that in scenarios where you might have had some AoE to do it at some point, but then you have loads of single target to do that's relevant as well, and then you really take the hit there and it doesn't feel as good.
Yeah, I think it's one thing they tried to change, because like, obviously you do get a buff, like Devouring Plague does hit harder when you take this talent.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that isn't always super obvious to people, like you mentioned, it is a loss right now in single target. I think it's like 7-8%, depending on what your build is. And a lot of that's because there's so many things that happen, you know, when you press Devouring Plague, you know, Screams of the Void, apparitions, Surge of Insanity procs, right?
Yeah, you're losing so many casts. And like the increased uptime value is just non-existent because Shadow's uptime percentage in single target for Devouring Plague is already like in the mid-80s.
Yeah, it's like 85%, and I think with Distorted Reality, I think it goes up to like 95-ish, 95-100%.
Yeah,
right?
and then you've got Void Form on top of that, so the uptime percentage doesn't actually matter at all half of the time because your Void Form's like 50 seconds.
Yeah, so I'll go to Twicks real quick. So from a keys perspective, and I know Ellie and I were actually chatting about this earlier today, but Twicks, what are your thoughts on like Distorted Reality in general or use inside of keys? Because I know like the kind of multi-dot or like sustained targets isn't always a thing in Mythic Plus, right? But
so in keys, Distorted Reality feels absolutely good. You have to play the stock market. Which mobs can you Devouring Plague and have it last long enough? If you're near the end of the pool, you can't really press it because you're gonna get 3 seconds of value on it. It's just better to hold it. Do you just press it for that minor damage increase and use all that insanity, or do you save for the next pool? It's very, very hard to like know. Or you just play Mind's Eye and then maybe do slightly less AoE damage and a lot more single target, which is more important for the group anyway. So that's.
But
also,
kind of depends on the dungeons themselves,
it's just
right?
Yeah, it's just playing against itself, like with Sear and like Yogg being based on apparitions and screams. It's like it just plays against itself too often.
Yeah, the friction with it feels really odd that they've designed a talent this way. It's like they've forgotten how the rest of the tree works when you look at this talent. It doesn't feel like it should exist in the same world that half of these things do.
I will add one thing. If there is a lot of movement in a fight, it could be really good because it's hard to maintain the uptime on the short version if you have to move around a lot. So if you do have to move around a lot, it can be useful. And like you said, new players kind of struggle with uptime a little bit more.
It's kind of a training wheels talent that also just happens to have one niche use case.
Yeah, like you're like sustained multi-target as the niche use case, but then if you're a beginner, getting something, or there's like a heavy movement fight that you're just now learning, like maybe that's helpful, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I do. That is kind of what it feels like, because they were like, out of all, with this rework, they actually didn't do a whole ton of iteration. They did a lot of like, here's a big dump of new stuff, and that was kind of it. But the one thing they did do a lot, they changed and buffed Distorted Reality, I think like 3 or 4 times. So they clearly wanted this guy to be used. So.
Yeah, I think like giving the spec a sort of easy mode was probably a very high priority for them, given how complicated it's been historically and how the difficulty curve for Shadow has always been kind of a difficulty cliff.
Yeah.
You do like absolutely nothing until you get a certain amount good, and then you just spike up as like everything clicks into place. So hopefully this talent kind of helps alleviate that issue. But
yeah, probably not using
doesn't
keys,
feel-
probably not single target unless you're like learning or starting out. Maybe single target.
yeah, maybe it would be maybe it's a council fight thing. Maybe.
Yeah, and we can get into the raid a bit later, but I actually don't like even the raid really doesn't have much of it, you know.
No, there isn't.
Maybe Forgotten Experiments on Mythic. Maybe I don't know. Probably not. Probably not. Probably not.
I mean, maybe for prog and then not on farm because everything just dies.
Yeah. So.
Like half that fight's single target.
Yeah, I think it's like half single, half two target or
thing.
something. So it's like, yeah, no.
It's like the first minute single, and then it's two target, and then as soon as the other two
like,
die, then it's single target again.
Like maybe if it wasn't this catastrophically bad on single target, you could say, oh, it's that good on this bit of the fight. It's fine to run a slight loss compared to distorted reality, but it is so bad on single target.
And again, to what we were
really
saying, right? It's because of all the other things that we're taking that kind of go against it, right? Like the tier set you mentioned. I think Surge of Insanity procs are the biggest one, to be honest. Like getting effectively 20% less of those, or 18%, whatever it is. Getting less of those procs, that's a pretty big deal considering like how much insanity and damage
doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like it lines up well with the rest of the kit at all. It's just kind of there.
It also doesn't help it like Idol of Yogg-Saron, which would also like that's one of those like going down far left side, like Mindbender, Inescapable Torment, Yogg-Saron, like doesn't really matter if you're casting Devouring Plague less, but those talents are really undertuned right now. So I think that's the other thing hurting it, and I think it would do better if that was tuned better. But because we're forced to take, not forced, but there's quite a lot of talents, right? That screams and Yogg and everything. So it's your side.
Yeah, like the whole tree is kind of pushing us towards that. And like another thing is, as we get more and more gear, Devouring Plague uptime gets more and more relevant because we get more mastery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true.
So maybe there's some justification like in the far distant future where we can't get more like uptime with it because haste ultimately kind of caps out at some point, but
maybe
you kind of want more damage increase, then maybe it scales a little bit better there, but that's unlikely.
Yeah,
especially given Void Form is just gonna kind of dominate half your rotation.
Yeah.
Also, I wanted to add something about multi-target. If you were to take Distorted Reality in like a large multi-target scenario, so like Assault of the Sequoia, a big ad fight, there's times where it is still beneficial to spread Devouring Plague without Distorted Reality. You have so much insanity that you could still maintain 2 Devouring Plagues, which is it's kind of minor, but I just wanted to point it out. That is
Tormented
not
Spirits
unique.
Tormented Spirits is a hell of a thing in fights like that.
And Phantasmal, right? I think is the other big one.
Yeah.
I think regardless of if it's necessarily good for like the question of like is that worth for overall, I think kind of depends on like again how long that target will live and stuff. But yeah, agreed. I think like my biggest thing with Distorted Reality is right now, and I think we'll get into this in just a bit. But Shadow's like damage is moving into we do AoE while doing mega priority target damage. Like that's just how we AoE now, right? And it feels like Mind's Eye plays into that more, where we're like, yep, this is the target that I'm gonna blast. And Distorted Reality is more like kind of like training wheels, like you're just like spreading plagues and stuff, but you lose some of that priority target, right?
That's kind of the thing. Like Mind's Eye is already an AoE talent because it affects Devouring Plague.
Yeah, right.
Like every talent in Shadow's tree is a single target and AoE talent already.
Kind of.
We don't need explicit AoE talents within the tree after that.
So now we do our AoE while blasting a priority target. So I think overall, I think this is a positive. I know, like, obviously losing Mind Spike is somewhat controversial. I think I would have loved to see a world where we still kept Mind Spike, but things aside, we do have like big priority target damage. So Twicks, I'll go to you first on this. How do you think, in general, like this new playstyle will like stack up in keys?
So obviously, priority damage is highly important. You saw examples of this in like Algathar. There's like the tree boss with the ads.
Ruby's a big one.
Like Azure Vault, Ruby. Yeah, there's tons of examples of this current Mythic Plus dungeons. We're likely to see more of it. It is a very important damage profile. That is why Fire Mage is also really good. And we saw the rise of the Searless build under the guise that it was more priority damage. in those scenarios as
Yep.
well.
So people like it.
But yeah, priority damage is insanely important. It kind of depends, like, is another priority damage class good? Is Fire Mage going to be good? Is it going to push Shadow out because they are also priority damage? That was a problem we kind of had where we had too much priority damage when we were playing Shadow Priest Fire Mage and I was playing Searless.
Yeah, and I think you wanted to
We
talk a
just
little bit
had
about like why you wanted to play Searless, right? Because it did have notable advantages, or I guess Mindseer had points where it was kind of a pain, right?
Yeah, so we had a dungeon like Ruby. You do the first pull, there's 3 different types of stories, 4 even.
Yeah.
From many different mobs. Where can you cast Sear? It's hard. Even Void Torrent, you can't. It's hard to get a full Void Torrent, so we're going to cast a full Sear. And even like Azure Vault, there's the frogs. Where can you cast Sear there? You're not really doing it anyway. Or like the spread cleave on the Azure Blade ads. Every pool has a prio mob. There was a reason that I played Searless, but I don't think it was correct. And I actually thought that it was more damage overall, even not including the priority damage, if there was a lot of movement.
Yeah.
And I don't think that was necessarily true. It was definitely close. And I do think, no shade thrown, but I do think the Sims were wrong
Yeah, no, that's
in
fair.
trying to compare Searless versus Sear in dungeons.
Yeah, I think it's also hard to quantify the movement thing, right? Like that's one of those things where it's hard to you'll never get a sim environment to like get that right, especially in keys, I think. So if you're having a lot of cases where you're forcing canceling of mind seers because there's a swirly under you. You can't cheese like you get the higher keys. There's no eating some of those, right? You would just die. So like
Yeah.
it wasn't necessarily like you just couldn't play with Sear on some of that stuff, right?
Yeah, that's.
I mean, yeah. And then we got to the end of the season, and everyone just switched back to
Yeah, that was
Sear.
pretty fun.
The end game build.
But I think like the point was there,
Yeah.
like if you could make the most of Sear, like mobs were stacked up, you were getting your channels off, you got your full mind devours off. It wasn't, there wasn't a bad affix week or whatever. It was theoretically doing a lot of damage. But I think what you're saying is just totally true. Obviously, what always comes out in Sims or theoretical is not always how it's gonna line up in keys, right?
Yeah, and I do want to add, like, the priority damage was kind of fake. I mean, it was real if you played around
Yeah.
it, but also you just did less damage overall, for sure, if you did try to Omega Blast Prio. But I was definitely doing a lot more priority damage. Or maybe I was just playing Sear wrong or, some shit like that.
Yeah,
but-
I think what we always told people, which was interesting, is when you played Mindseer, you effectively gave yourself the choice whether or not to use it.
Oh yeah, you
Right.
didn't need Mind Sear. You could do more prio damage with Mind Sear by just playing differently.
Exactly.
But I don't think
Yeah.
people understood
Like
that.
just because you're talented into Mindseer doesn't mean you always have to press it, right? Like if you're like I would play Mindseer and Ruby, but then when we get to the trash pulls at the top of the ring with the big fire alley, like I would just play Searless, right? Because I wanted the priority target. So I think it was that always tripped people up. But yeah, I'm sad to see the choice gone, but it is kind of where we're at now. So I think I'll go to Ellie next. Is kind of so to play off what Twicks was saying. One of the highlights of dropping Sear in live was, I think, the ability to handle movement better was probably one of the biggest advantages. So how do you feel going into 10-1 now that we're kind of forced into a pseudo Searless situation? How that's going to play out? Because our movement did get hit, right?
Movement definitely did get hit going into the next tier. Like we've lost the Surge of Darkness procs,
Yep.
which were not necessarily the most useful things in Mythic Plus if you were playing really well, because you were flooded with them because you had so many VTs up, and you kind of ended up like using them just to move. Like it made your rotations super fluid in heavy movement encounters because you always just had something to press that was quite good. And also, fun fact, they were a DPS increase to pop explosives with because you still got the psychic link damage and you got your Twist of Fate proc for free. So if you needed to get Twist of Fate in explosive week, they were actually quite good there. That's a little fun tidbit. Rip explosive, never coming back, thank God. But other than that, I think Searless has one major issue, and that is it's effectively target capped at like 8. I'll be generous and say 12. It's effectively target capped at 12 because you just can't consistently maintain more dots than that and have time to press buttons that capitalize on those dots, because at the end of the day you can dot 15 targets, but unless you're pressing buttons to make psychic link do damage, you're not getting value out of those dots. And Shadow Crash being capped at 8 and losing Mind Sear, which was effectively capped at 20, I believe, has definitely hurt our ability to do pulls like the start of Algathor Academy. So if we encounter, there aren't really any pulls like that in next tier yet.
There's one I can think of.
I can't think of any right now, but I also know a few completely insane tanks who will make them.
Yeah.
Like there's like you don't pull 12 mobs at a time, or you don't pull 12, 15 mobs at a time, but there's definitely 3 or 4 packs that, with the right amount of coordination on a key level where it requires it, I can definitely see a tank pulling all 4 at once.
So I guess let's cover the dot management topic. So I think this is probably my biggest pain point going into 10-1. And you know, I did play Searless occasionally, but I definitely mostly was playing with Mind Sear and my stuff. I wasn't going as high as you guys, like 25s, 26s at most. But going into 10-1 with the removal of Mind Sear, right, which to your point, with Mental Decay, really helped bridge the gap on, you know, dot extension when you weren't in Void form or didn't have Crash, whatever. So how do you guys feel going into 10-1? We'll start out with Twicks, because we do have Shadow Crash still. It's now a 20-second cooldown. Doesn't really do any damage anymore, but it is there. Like every 20 seconds we can throw it out. Obviously, Shadow Crash has some issues. We can talk about that too. But I think is just having Shadow Crash for dot application, like I gotta feel like that's gonna cause problems, right?
Yeah. So first of all, your dots only last 21 seconds. Like you have to throw Shadow Crash on cooldown every time. There's no room to spare, where you will lose damage,
right.
Which I think is kind of it's a little messed up. Maybe 15 seconds, slightly better. You have some room to press it and still maintain your other damage things that you want to do. But mainly what I want to add is like the pulls you were talking about, like where your target capped. There's a Brackenhide Hollow. There's actually all these tiny little mobs that come out when you're fighting these trees
or something.
Yeah, and sometimes there's like 12 mobs, 15 mobs, but you don't really care about maybe 5 of those mobs at most.
I mean,
Shadow Crash will hit the wrong targets. And
yes.
Or
This is something that happens on live as well, especially if you're trying to play Searless in Temple of the Jade Serpent, for example.
Oh, the Shaw link.
You do like a double pull with small shards, and then you just press Shadow Crash, and none of the big mobs get dotted, and you just like
droplets too.
Yeah, droplets.
Droplets are less of a problem, I find, because you have GCDs within those pulls to actually get the VTs out on things, but it's still annoying. But yes, just like Shadow Crash. Also, the Shadow Crash bug is also still not fixed, and it infuriates me so much.
Oh, let's talk about that real quick. It's not a bug.
Wait, what?
Okay, the clip I showed you yesterday, the sleet was after my crash landed.
Oh, was it?
You're wrong.
Okay, so what we know is what we've looked at. Things like blinding sleet or crowd control abilities that go out can tamper with the ability for Shadow Crash dotting to work the way we would think it would. It's basically like CC protection is what happens sometimes. I don't want to say it's every case, but there are some things where like you throw a Shadow Crash and someone happens to throw a CC out at the same time, and the game will say like, oh, I can't dot that thing because it's CC'd. It's like that PvP protect, you know what I mean? Like that thing. That's what
So that's why you can't dot things on the first pull of Azure Vault, because the Paladin is always pressing Blinding
It's
Light
stuff
on
like
the
that.
first
That's half of
pull.
it,
Yes.
or at least that's part of it.
Right. You're feeling my rage in real time.
Yeah,
right
it's
now.
pretty bad. I think the other part that happens sometimes, like obviously like Z-axis problems are really fun, or like stairs can happen.
Oh yeah, shadow crashing the roof. I've had
Oh yeah,
plenty
that
of
too.
those.
Yep. I mean,
And
it's
the worst one is there is a lamppost
Yeah.
in Court of
Yeah.
Stars just after the archway when you go in, and about 35% of the time when you start the first impact pull, your shadow crash will just go behind you.
yeah.
Oh, there's also a little lantern on the roof of Temple of the Jade Serpent in the first pool.
Yep.
I've
Yeah,
shadow
that one
crashed
gets.
that a few
yeah.
I've
times.
shadow crashed that
Yep.
before as well. Yes, it's just like, and also shadow crashing up and down hills is just so bad. Knocker defensive, the fucking burial
yeah.
mounds are so terrible
Oh yeah.
for this.
No, that's like anything Z-axis like that. It's trash, man. I mean,
because your shadow crash just goes like, I don't know, 10 yards further than you thought it was going to go, or just in front of your feet when you wanted it to go up a hill, and it's just like, no, this is
so yeah,
awful.
shadow crash not only doesn't work the way that we want to, it also just sometimes just doesn't. Like it's
Yes.
Yeah, I want to talk about another lesser known bug. If you throw a shadow crash and then die while it's in the air,
Oh yeah, you
it
got
won't
nothing.
dot
oh
anything.
nice.
So you know,
Yeah.
if you're doing the first pull of
Nice.
Azure Ball, you throw your shadow crash, you die because someone missed a kick, or you're in the
Yeah.
frontal. All right, you're AFK for the rest of the pull. You don't have shadow crash anymore.
Yeah.
Yes, that's happened before a couple of times. I want to sort of raise like a semi-positive about the loss of Mindseer.
Sure.
And we never really talk about it as a community, I guess, and nobody really brought it up until Knocker defensive third area started becoming like, and we started seeing people pull these really, really high numbers and started wondering like, why is there such a difference between players in this area? And it's kind of that like Mindseer is really, really small.
10 yards or something?
10 it's 10 yards around the target, which compared to your conventional like blizzards and rain of fires is really very, very small. And your target selection in pulls like that, especially when things start being spread out, because some things want to cast, some things want to stand still, some things chase your tank, some things get slowed, like you lose a lot of damage from targets just not getting hit.
And
by
there's
it.
quite a bit of that
also
in Season 2 keys as well. Like Neltharian's Lair and Freehold, I know, has quite a bit where there are just like grouping mobs is kind of a challenge sometimes, right?
Impossible. Yes. It also Z-axes as well. So if you're mind searing on the Knocker defensive third area hills, if you're mind searing something at the top, it won't hit something that's also in the pull and in range at the bottom. And there's just so much annoyance with Mindseer and the way it works compared to like a drop-down AoE like Blizzard or Rain of Fire, or the strongest and most ridiculous AoE button in the entire game, Starfall.
Yeah,
true.
Well, Starfire has a similar issue with balance druids, but yeah, anyway.
Not great.
I am glad to see Mindseer optimization going away. I don't know how many other people played around it, but
the tier set, you mean?
You kind of had to, the tier set, and it's like, do you cancel this Sear early? Is it worth losing this one tier set on a half Sear instead of a full Sear to use this Mind Games or Torrent or Void Bowl or get 2 more Mind Blasts?
Or is it worth losing losing the rest of this Sear to move it to a different target that is hitting more mobs?
Yeah, that is a very min-max thing that I don't think a lot of people played around with, but
They should have just, to be fair, that should have just been fixed. I was still really, I mean, we reported that bug day one the tier set came out. And for those of you guys in chat that weren't aware, so if you channeled Mindseer, you can get up to 4 ticks. No matter how many ticks you were casting it, whether it was 100, 75 insanity, or 50, the last tick would never be buffed by the tier set. So if you had 4 ticks, only 3 out of the 4 would get buffed if you just full channeled the entire time. What Twicks was saying, a quote optimization you can do to work around that bug, or effectively you would lose a buffed tick from the tier set, is you would cancel it before that would happen. So if you had 4 ticks worth of Mindseer, you would just cancel it after the 3rd tick, and then you would still have that insanity to use the next time.
Yeah,
pretty
it's
bad. They should have fixed it. I don't know. Like I don't know how else to really say it like that. That's just they should have fixed it, right?
They should have absolutely fixed that. Yes. There was like Mindseer was just not a very well made or telegraphed spell, and as a spender, like all of those problems kind of got exacerbated.
And maybe
I
that's
guess.
why they removed it. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they just said, "Hey, we can't
Maybe.
figure this out, or we don't have time to figure this out." So, see ya. um,
I mean, that is kind of the approach they took to a lot of Shadow's bugs. Shadow is relatively bug free going into next tier because they just removed every talent that was bugged.
bug free, but now we have to deal with Shadow
yeah.
Crash. I think
Shadow Crash just needs to be uncapped, and then all the bugs are solved.
that would definitely help. I would also say, like, I don't know. Personally, I wish we could. There was a world that we didn't have to take Shadow Crash to do. You know what I mean? Like, is there any other way they can think about how to solve this problem? Because a projectile
Shadow
spell
Crash is-
ain't it for me.
Oh yeah, when Dorky pulls too many mobs and he's like, "Oh yo, fucking knock here." There goes my Shadow Crash. It just went into the Ring of Peace, and no mobs are there.
Yep,
Or like you were
yep,
saying this earlier, Twix, of like, and I think people in chat will get this a lot too. When you're in a pug, you don't know when the tank is stopping. You can like guess. You're like, okay, I think he's done pulling, but then they're like, no, actually, I'm gonna go over here now. You know, it's like,
yeah.
That is another.
It just doesn't work out very well like that. And like Shadow Crash is a very heavy spell in terms of it's one global that effectively decides whether you do any AoE damage at all for the next 20 seconds.
So I wanted to add on something to this too. There's a lot of moments where, say an ad, I'll bring up Brackenhide again, where those small little ads come in. They're not really important to kill, but it still feels bad that you can't do anything to them. You're just useless against them. And maybe that's the patter mindset in me, but I'm sure other people agree that it just sucks not being able to do damage to those.
I mean, I'll say the shopping cart test of the shopping cart test of AoE DPS for season 1 was the birds on the pulls before Croft. And it's just, are you a filthy padder, or do you let your funnel classes do funnel damage?
or first boss and Ruby was the other big one.
Oh yeah, I got many complaints.
Yes, but like those birds, like when there's like a big bird and then there's all the small birds and everything, and like you have a feral druid with you and you just like deliberately don't Shadow Crash, like that's the morality kind of test there. The morality test next tier is going to be those blobs in Brackenhide. It's like, will we let our like enhancement shaman or feral druid gain all those extra procs and do more damage to the big thing, or will we just hold our Shadow Crash deliberately, blow everything up, and say, haha, I'm top overall?
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a pain. So yeah, I hope they have a chance to look at it. I mean, uncapping Crash would be sick. I would love that. I don't think they're ever gonna do that, but that would be cool.
I think uncapping Crash just fundamentally breaks the rule of you can only hit up to 20 targets for increased damage.
Yeah.
Or just raise the cap.
I think double 2 charges.
It wasn't
would
a problem.
help too, right?
It wasn't really a problem as much earlier.
Help,
because you had Sear, so you could still hit the other targets that weren't dotted.
Yeah, and you also had Sear in void form, so a large kind of portion of the dot's relevance, which was gaining mastery value, kind of got sidestepped by void form, which made it much easier to do like big AoE on like the first pull of Algathar Academy.
I mean, we do have some of that still, right? Like, I don't want to discount, like, we do still have like N'Zoth and Yogg damage, which is hitting those things, right?
Yeah, true.
But obviously, to turn those things on, you need to dot things first, right?
Yes.
So, but yeah, I agree. I think the distribution is a little skewed because of that. So yeah. Okay, so yeah, I think we've beat Shadow Crash into a pulp a little bit. Not that it didn't deserve it, but moving on, I think, unless I missed something. Oh, sorry, Ellie, did we cover what you wanted? You posted this forever ago.
It was kind of like it was more about Searless on live.
If you have any quick points on Sear, let's crank it out before we move on then.
Searless on live, I guess that like the advantage of Searless on live was mostly intangible benefits. Like it was very hard to pin down exactly why Searless was good in a particular situation because as the talent build wasn't really you could just put Sear into the talent build by taking one less utility
Right.
talent, and just have Sear anyway. So you weren't really arguing about like a fundamental defining build choice. You were just like arguing about one point.
Yeah, I mean it's people like what they like though. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
And now
it
we
was
lost
good at
that
2
utility point. Sucks to suck.
Yeah, we've lost the utility point completely because now the AoE is a mandatory talent you have
Look
to
what you
take.
did.
So you can't do anything about it now. We just don't get
That's okay.
utility.
I'll lose Dispersion to take stun for Incorporeal. It's all
Yeah,
good.
you don't need silence.
It's just Blizzard fixed this problem on Balanced Druid when Beam was untakeable for the first half of the first
Yeah,
season.
but they don't consider mental fortitude the same thing as solar beam, right?
But also the amount of utility talents in spec trees across the entirety of the game I can count on one hand.
It sucks.
2/3 of them are on
It
Shadow
sucks.
Priest.
I'm not...
It's awful.
Yeah. Okay. So,
And they've also shown with the rep hard in rework they are perfectly capable of making class trees have spec specific nodes.
that's true.
So they could move all of that stuff over to the class tree and replace the terrible holy talents we're never going to take.
Oh yeah, give healers silence. Just put silence on the
Please.
general tree. That'd be
Oh
good.
my god.
I mean, you could put silence on the general tree and then make it only show up for shadow.
No, don't do that. Would just piss people off more.
Yeah, Disc needs it, man. Why?
I need Shadow Word interrupt. It's not a silence. It's a 24/7.
Shadow word.
It's a
interrupt.
20. You know, we can workshop the name, okay?
Shadow word shush.
24-second kick, no silence on the class tree. When you take silence, it upgrades it to what silence is today. It's not hard.
Okay,
You know?
a weird, just off-topic silence. Its main benefit is that's a silence, right? It's a blanket
And it's
silence.
kind of useless.
All the
Also-
important mobs you need to interrupt are lieutenants. They cannot be silenced.
Or,
What is the point?
PvP.
or also, they're all every important spell on any mob in Mythic Plus has both a cast time and a cooldown. Kicking it is
Yeah.
the same as silencing it because it's not going to cast it again for 27 seconds regardless.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the benefit of a silence in the game is non-existent, basically.
Non-existent.
But with
Like,
how short it is, especially in keys, right?
Yeah.
There
like,
was one specific use, and it's you can actually silence rune carvers and mystics while they're in range of sentinels and halls of valor.
Okay, that was the only thing, but that's also counteracted by the Inquisitors and their miraculously weird method of being unkickable for some reason.
Yeah, I mean they could fix that too, which would be kind of interesting. I don't know if this would be preferred, but they could make the silence debuff just longer in PvE. Like, what if it was just 30 seconds or something crazy?
30?
Hey, I don't know.
Oh, maybe like 10, 15.
Hey,
but
let's
10,
try
15
30.
10,
Let's see
15
where
will-
we get from there, right?
I mean, Twix. The cooldown of every kickable spell that's important in Mythic Plus in Dragonlance Season 2 is 27 seconds.
I mean, we can talk about like
anything less than 27 doesn't do anything.
a spell like Cinderbolt, where
Okay, so, yeah,
it does need
Cinderbolt-
constant kicks.
Yes, but also like having one player be able to cover one of those permanently is not really that big of a deal when there's so few of them already.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess
I don't know. I mean, I don't. I'm just.
Like that'd be cool. Like that'd be cool
Just-
utility for
just
just like,
pitching
oh,
the
we
idea.
have a Shadow Priest, therefore one mob that's constantly casting just doesn't cast anymore.
So I'll bounce around a little bit because I know there was something else we want to cover with build diversity, but I think before we get there, let's. I like this utility conversation. So obviously, like, we have the worst interrupt in the game, so like that's why we're bringing this up, at least in PvE. But as far as general utility going into season 2, I don't know. Like I was looking at the dungeons the other day, and it does seem like Shadow still has or I guess I shouldn't say Shadow. Priest in general has quite a lot going for it in terms of utility. I don't know, Ellipsis, if you've gotten a chance to look at it yet, or any thoughts?
My opinion is that there are a lot of important diseases to be dispelling in this season's keys, and also we have an affix that makes Shackle Undead good.
Yep. And Purge and Mass
no
Dispel
idea.
is still really good.
That's a healer mechanic.
Well,
I have absolutely no idea how I'm going to talent into Shackle Undead, but I do want to talent into it now.
you don't need Body and Soul. It's a crutch.
And minus spell wording.
Yeah. But yeah, I think a lot of all
yeah.
the new affixes are pretty good for like priests in general. I think we have pretty good answers for all of them, right?
Yeah, we do. We're very solid
Yeah.
for all of them.
So yeah,
There is one major elephant in the room for Shadow utility, and that is that they have absolutely nuked Vampiric Embrace.
Ooh, good topic. So yeah,
Yeah.
for those of you guys that didn't know, on live today, every time you register a damage event from Psychic Link, so if you're facing 4 targets, you would get 3 hits of Psychic Link. Every single one of those hits would contribute to Vampiric Embrace healing. That was obviously broken. I don't think anyone was arguing that.
I mean, honestly, no, it wasn't. Because have you seen what enhanced shamans can do with Inception
I didn't
Guidance?
say that wasn't broken either, but
That's also not changed.
so yeah, they've removed that interaction, so it no longer does that. Which I think needed to be fixed, but I was sad to see we didn't get any compensating buffs to Vampiric Embrace.
The spell just Vampiric Embrace does not do enough healing right now. It just doesn't.
On single target, yeah, I kind of agree, but I don't know. When I was doing the plus testing, I was still doing 50, 60k HPS sometimes with Vampiric Embrace up.
Yeah, I mean,
Not-
I guess
good.
just gone are the days of solo healing a shield phase.
Oh yeah, I've solo healed 120k HPS Tempest Antlers before, you know.
Yeah, or like
Those are the
I mean,
days.
the example I was going for Maladressa Chill Swan.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
during
I'm just
the
gonna
ad
I'm
phase.
just gonna like dot 8 dragons and blow all my cooldowns into the boss, break the shield to 150k HPS.
Yeah,
How to
like,
end that
that's
fight
fun.
like 30k overall HPS around
but
that
maybe
fight.
they think now that we
Yeah.
do our AoE single target, like when you pop Vampiric Embrace, even in AoE now, you get the extra stuff from Devouring Plague, and the way that Screams works now, you know what I mean? Like before, if you were channeling Mind Sear, your Vamp Embrace wasn't as good, but now, even with all builds, like you're still getting that big benefit now. So
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
apparitions are just doing a ton of damage now,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah,
also contributing more to V.
I still think it needs a bit of something, honestly. Compared to like what enhanced shamans, Ellie shamans, and Moonkins are able to do with their buttons, like ours does feel a little bit left behind at this point.
yeah, I would almost take like putting the cooldown to 2 minutes, but then buffing it or something.
I mean, the cooldown is 2 minutes when you don't take.
That was kind of
sunlight.
my point.
Yeah, just like
You take the
just, like,
sand lane anyway.
just like remove the CDR from sand
Just make it
lane
hit
and
more,
put
yeah.
that CDR into more
Yeah.
value would be nice. Yeah, because the CDR doesn't do anything because we already pop it with cooldowns anyway,
Usually, yeah.
and our cooldowns are a 2-minute cycle, so you never want it 20 seconds earlier.
Mhm.
Okay, no, there is one
I mean,
situation.
or it could
you
be, you know, a 1-minute V would be cool.
Yeah. Okay. There is a single situation where you want to press VE on cooldown.
Well, Dark Ascension though, right?
No, because Dark Ascension is 1 minute and then it's 1.
That's okay. Sorry, that's what Twix was saying. Is if it
Yes.
was 1 minute.
But yeah, there is a single situation on live where you do want to press Vampiric Embrace on cooldown. Twix.
There's
One.
there's multiple. There's the Chill Storms and First Boss Ruby.
Okay,
Mm.
chill storms are based on health percentage, so it's like depends on.
Yeah,
how
they're around
what kilo
115
you're
apart.
doing.
So
Yeah.
there's
the
the
o-
Destroyers and Ruby. You usually pull them around 115 apart, so you can get
Yeah.
one
Okay,
every
the one
destroyer.
I was going for was Nalish in SBG, because the phases
Oh,
are
yeah.
exactly 1 minute 20 seconds apart, and it lets you press your healing cooldown and then chill downstairs until your cooldowns are back or thundering starts, and then go back up.
I'm done with that dungeon.
And it's
Wait,
just
no.
it's so
That is-
so good for that.
It is really
no, we're
good.
mo-
I was
It's
gonna
so
point
good
out some
for
other
that.
examples. There's like second boss court too, where
Yeah.
you won't
Second
get
boss-
two uses. You won't get
Yeah,
two
you don't
uses,
get
so-
two otherwise. You don't get two otherwise. So yeah, like that's the only like strictly this thing has a 120 timer one I can think of. All the others are like based on kill times and stuff. But yeah, being able to fit a Vampiric Embrace on the first Chill Storm and on the first ad phase on Maladressa and the second one has been great.
Mm.
So maybe not a massive fan of increasing the cooldown, but definitely does feel like the thing needs a little bit more.
Something,
If not power, then consistency.
maybe. But I do think in general,
the fact
like
it's not-
utility-wise,
it's not-
all things considered, I still think we're gonna be really strong. I think, especially if we didn't
think-
really talk about power infusion yet, but like the spec has quite a lot.
I think.
Yeah.
I think the way I would describe it is Shadow is better at countering affixes than it is countering dungeons.
Mm.
We have a terrible kick.
Well,
Very
Yeah.
little of what we have lines up with actual dungeon mechanics.
well,
We're
but
just
in
very
season
good
2,
at
like you
removing
mentioned, there's a
afflictions.
lot of diseases spells that will be useful for depending on your comp. And Mass
Yeah.
Dispel actually kind of cracked on some of these things. Like I know like the biggest example for me in season 2 is going to be the last boss in Underrot. Master spell on that boss, like if you don't have it, that boss is terrible.
There's one more example.
Yeah.
There's the Halls of Infusion, the big frost dragons right before the third boss. They put down a new debuff, and if you don't master spell it instantly, your whole team's dead.
Yeah, it's like.
I mean, I'm assuming it's gonna get nerfed, but
it's like Thunderhead on crack. It's awful. And then there are 3 of them. Like, okay, how do we do this?
Yeah.
I wanted to add on
Go for it.
The interrupt too. So there's really no important kicks. Yeah, there's important kicks, but your other people in your team can do it. You're not really stretching for kicks. You don't really need a prop power to like solo kick everything or anything like that. There's only one dungeon where
you're talking about in season 2 specifically.
Yeah, in season 2.
They definitely reduced the number of like kick this or die spells that are going on in Mythic.
Well, I think specifically how many are happening at once, right? I think that's the hard part, or like not.
Yeah,
like
there's one example.
In a pack, right?
I think the thing is, I pack by pack basis kind of just goes out the window once you start trying to work out how to actually pull these keys and push them high, because you just start pulling 3 or 4 dangerous packs at once, and then it's like, how do we fit all the kicks on all of these mobs? But yeah, there's no like Cinderbolt bonanzas going on like there was in Ruby Life Pools or anything.
What's your current example, Twix, that you were thinking of?
At Notharis, there's the little fire elementals that cast Melt, and Melt hurts.
Yes.
And you pull like 4 of them at a time. So it's like one. You can let one go off on one person. If 2 go off, you die.
Yeah, that's going to be kind of a chain. Have all of our AoE things going in, chain all of our AoE things whilst killing them all.
Oh, yeah. Like pulling 9 flowers and
we forgot to cut. Speaking of AoE stuff, I forgot we have 2 uncapped AoE things now, which is cool.
We have one.
Well, Void Tendrils is a thing. So yeah, Psychics.
No, it's not.
Is it though?
Okay. No, it's not.
Hey, it was really cool that 1 week it was bugged.
That 1 week it was overpowered as hell. Dude. Yeah, that was fun.
But yes, I mean, Psychic Scream being an AoE stop now is pretty huge, though, all things considered. I think.
It is.
Oh yeah.
I want to raise one caveat about that.
You don't like being in melee?
I don't like it's got an 8-yard range. 8
Yeah,
yards.
but you want to be melee priest anyway because of the tier set, right?
Okay, fine. Yes, you do. You do have to stand in melee all the time because of the way the tier
Melee
set works, and the way and Phantasmal Pathogen. Like ghosts are so good now that you can't afford to lose them. But yeah, like 8 yards is really small, and people think like, oh, they compare like Our Fear to like Moonkin's Roar. Yeah.
No.
I mean, in terms of like, oh, a caster has to go in a bit to press something and CC things. Nobody realizes it's got half the range of that ability. Yeah. It's really bad.
Yeah.
Like how far.
Hey, you know what? I'll take the wins where we can get them. Okay. This is a dub. It's not. You know.
Yes. This is a dub, obviously. I'll take it where I can get it. And obviously, a 15-yard range Psychic Scream that hits everything is utterly broken in PvP, and I would never ask for that.
If only we had a spell that was an AoE stun that replaced Psychic Scream.
That's crazy.
I would even take it being delayed as a punishment for how powerful and effective.
Okay, so you'd cast it on an enemy, and then like 2 seconds later, it would explode and stun everything.
Yeah, that sounds really.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, definitely.
Sad.
Yes, and then I guess we go to our other CC. I guess I will mention Void Tendrils.
I mean, yeah, Void Tendrils, I don't know if it'll have much use. I don't, but it is uncapped.
The problem with Void Tendrils is it has no grace period. None.
So you're just finding grace period between casting it and doing enough damage to break it?
Casting it and the mobs turning to attack it to break it.
Okay, sure.
Like it's going to break instantaneously no matter what. The key level scales up, the damage goes up. It's always going to break instantaneously on the first melee hit anything ever does. But I think there should be like a 2 to 3 second window where the mobs don't hit it. And that would make it fine. Completely
I think
fine.
The other problem it has too, I've seen this a couple times. I think it depends on the pull. Maybe Twix, you've seen this too, or you would cast Void Tendrils and then the mobs would be like, "Oh, they're the closest thing in melee. I'm gonna hit you now."
You're close. You're closer than the tendril. The tendril is attached to my feet somehow. Therefore, I will hit you instead.
Yeah.
Like That happened a little bit while it was bugged, but it was still
Spiteful
just
weak.
the upside was just still so high that you just used it anyway, and it kind of showed you like how good Void Tendrils could be, even if
Oh,
it was like just a little bit better. It didn't have to be overpowered like it was. Like it didn't have to completely nullify the last pull of Jade Serpent.
You're saying like if it
Would
always
you-
gave you a grace period of like, oh, when you cast this, minimum it lasts for like 2 seconds or something.
If it lasted two or 3 seconds as a minimum, and then instantly broke to the next melee, that would be really kind of useful, not overpowered, and I'd be able to find like ways to make that good.
Yeah.
And do interesting things.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Twitch, what are your thoughts on Void Tendrils or changes to it?
I feel like, yeah, the grace period is it would be a fine change. You could also just reduce the cooldown to be like mass root, and you can just perma root
yeah.
something if you want to.
Yeah, but it will.
But also,
you can't perma root things because they just instantly attack and break their own root.
that's what I was saying is just change it to be just mass root, but
Oh,
for
just
shadow.
be mass root. Okay.
And it is also 8 yards, so
Yeah.
there's no really avoiding getting meleeed if you are, unless they fix it. But
They need to fix that bug as well.
I mean,
alongside
they
it,
could
otherwise
just
is
make
complete-
it like Mass and Tango at that point and just be like, yeah, you could cast it on a target or an AoE reticle or something. That would be.
Oh,
that would be
yeah,
nice.
like actually like mass root.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think maybe the way in which to fix Shadow Priest spells should not be just copy Druid spells.
Well, maybe.
We've mentioned it for Psychic Scream now, and we've mentioned it for
That's
Tendrils.
true.
So
okay, well, we're just copying Binding Shot
Yeah.
now.
I mean, I think I think the
Binding
point
Shot's
though is
fun
that
now,
Void
though.
Tendrils costs a talent point, right? It's not a baseline thing that we have. It is you're taking this and giving up something else. It should be worth it to take sometimes.
It has
We have to get
zero
to
use.
VE, and right now we take Dominant Mind just because it has slightly more
It's
utility.
got
uses.
something sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's something
Yes.
Spiteful,
sometimes,
I guess. I
but
don't
we
know.
could drop that for Void Tendrils, yeah.
Yeah, but they need to do something about Void Tendrils, otherwise it's going to be a completely unused spell in every category of the game.
Yeah.
Forever.
Until it breaks again.
Yeah, until they somehow manage to bug it again.
Okay, so last topic on Mythic Plus, and then we'll try to cover the raid a little bit. I just want to hit on build diversity. So this was kind of this has been memed on a little bit by people, but I did want to get your guys' thoughts on one of the goals with their rework that they put in the post was they wanted to increase build diversity. I think a lot of us thought this was kind of weird considering, honestly, in keys right now, you have some choices, right? Both, like, obviously the big one being, do you want to play Searless or not? But all 4 idols received play this season at a high level. The idols being the capstone 10th row stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it was kind of weird that we saw that and we're like, hey, that's one of our goals that we want to fix. And it's like, well, isn't it already kind of good? So I'll go to Twicks first on this one. But yeah, what are your general thoughts with build diversity going into 10-1? Do you think it's improved? Do you think we have some more options, or do you think it actually got worse?
So I just want to start off. It definitely did get worse. But I want to point out why. So they changed a lot of talents. They made they buffed Death
Yep.
Speaker. Death Speaker is a really cool talent, even though we still don't take it. Unlucky. Like Insidious Ire just should be. It just enforces you should be playing around your mastery a lot. That's really good. And then we have the option, of course, now of having triple idols. So
In a couple places, actually.
and yeah, you're kind of just always going to take triple idol, except in pure single target. I
I
think
think so.
pretty much. And then we have Mindbender and Inescapable Torment, which was nerfed because of the first tier
Yep.
set iteration, and then now we have a different tier set, and it's still just nerfed. So I don't really see any world where you take Mindbender. Even with DA,
Yeah, it's really hard.
last I saw it's still
so
not
far,
even that
and
good.
it was actually, and I don't know if you knew this, when they were in flux, like buffing and nerfing a bunch of stuff, there was like a week or so where Shadow or Death was actually in a good enough spot to where Death Speaker Yashiraj builds were actually competing pretty well. But then they nerfed Shadow or Death again. And And Yasharaj is kind of
Yeah.
dead, unfortunately, which feels bad.
Yeah, and nowadays we have there's no really flex points. So in single target you have some flex
You're
points.
saying
right?
now is in
Obviously
10-1 or 10-0?
Yeah,
Okay.
10-1, 10-1. You can't change anything. Like, maybe you could swap out Phantasmal for maybe Dark Evangelism or Mind Devourer, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, there's some like you can flex stuff in that middle section, kind of, but not a whole lot on single target.
Yeah, of course you can drop Mind Spike. It is a DPS loss, but if you hate Mind Spike,
It's like
you could.
2% or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we go back to 10-0. I have an add-on to help me manage how many different builds I use.
Yeah, it's got a lot, and I think is that a good thing? I guess to ask the question. Like I think it is. Like I think it's a good thing that we had lots of options, both single target, cleave, AoE. Like you had options, but maybe they thought it was too overwhelming. I don't know. Yeah, so I guess Ellipsis, your thoughts in general on like build diversity, Mythic Plus and beyond. But I mean, I'm assuming you're probably in the same boat. You think it's worse, but
I'm kind of like 50-50 because I think it's worse in one sense and better in another. It's worse in the sense that we have lost we don't have like flagship builds anymore. You don't have the Yogg, the Zoth build, or the Mindsear build, or the Searless build, etc., etc., etc. Yeah? But when you look at the talent tree, you realize how many talents, in the mid-section especially, that you now feel like you can take or leave compared to something else, depending on the situation.
Sure.
Like, we don't have whispers anymore being completely worthless. Maddening Touch is now a talent you actually look at sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, there's way less named build diversity, but within the Mythic Plus build, you have like 8 talents of float because everything is roughly equally in strength, and you have like so much more diversity in the middle sections. But yeah, the fact we have one capstone now that's not really very playable and has kind of like killed the entire left hand side of the tree, not great.
Yeah, I do wonder, like, to your point though, and I agree to an extent, but because you have at least 4 points of flex in the middle section in keys. Like you can pick 4 points between Maddening Touch, Dark Evangelism, Mind Devourer, Phantasmal Pathogen, and Mental Decay, or any utility point in the top section. I think the question though is, can you tell me like for sure like a reason why you would want like Maddening Touch over Dark Evangelism, or when you want Mind? Like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, we have flex
Absolutely
there,
not.
but like that's not intuitive flex, right?
It's not. Yeah, it's not something a player can champion or get invested in.
Yeah.
It's literally just a numbers
Right.
game.
That's
Or picking them at random. You don't feel like you're doing anything different with that, with the diversity that they've given. The diversity they've given is like a spreadsheet diversity in that everything now has a percentage of time it's going to be taken at some point. But you're never going to feel the difference.
Yeah, and to Twicks, your point as well, curious on your thoughts. Like you mentioned, we're probably going to take triple idol quite a lot. But like playstyle wise, does any of that change what you're doing?
I wanted to actually bring this up. Yogg is very, very good. And in 10-0, you kind of forget about it. Procs at the end of pull, unlucky.
Yeah.
But now in 10-1, it is a large portion of your DPS. You don't necessarily have to play around it, but you probably should if you're trying to optimize.
It's like what, at least 10% of your overall, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's insanely good. And I don't know how I feel about, end of a pull. Oh, I can't do any damage anymore. I'll just hardcast Mind Spike. Have fun, guys.
Cancel it.
I'm just. I'm not canceling at 24 stacks, man. Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I have major concerns about Yogg-Saron timing in keys and in raids in general, to the point where in raids you are going to like generate 5 or 6 stacks and then cancel to delay it a bit to make it line up with something. That is
Maybe,
something
yeah.
you are going, almost certainly something you are going to do. I hate that gameplay viscerally and aggressively.
I mean, they could just make
It's
it so you
terrible.
can't do that, for the record.
Yeah, but then that makes it play even
Okay,
worse,
I
because then you
just-
just don't have any control over it, and it's massively important.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a way to win with Idol of Yogg-Saron being as strong as it is right now.
Yeah, and just to talk about that
Which
a
is
little bit,
unfortunate
in
because
case
it makes it feel good to
in
use.
case anyone missed it, the reason why this is now a thing suddenly is after the entire expansion of us telling them and in beta, Yogg-Saron now finally works with Mastery, Shadow Form, Void Form, Idol of Yasharaj buffs, Twist of Fate, you name it. Not Ancient Madness, I think. Yeah.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't
I don't
work
think
with
any
AM.
pet souls work with AM anymore. Anyways, but yeah, now that it scales with all of that stuff, they buff the crap out of it by doing that, which is a good thing in the sense of like, yeah, our spells should interact with each other, right? But yeah, has somewhat brought this on.
It's almost like this happened before in Shadowlands, and the same thing kind of occurred.
Oh yeah.
Isn't it? It's like, oh, we have this thing that we kind of wanted to use, but it doesn't scale with anything, so it's kind of worthless. And then they buffed it and made it scale with everything, and it became ridiculously overpowered.
But it was fun.
It was very
Big
fun.
damage
Yes,
is fun.
Shadowflame Prism was definitely a good thing to have become part of Shadowlands, and I guess something we kind of enjoyed for a while in DF. But I'm glad to see it kind of step
we're
away
tired
now.
of it now.
But having the same thing happen to Yogg does feel a bit like deja vu all over again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, I know we're a little over what we expected, but let's just I just want to get your guys' thoughts on the raids. I know when we talked about Shadow Priest in Aberrus in 10.1 on the last podcast, but I'd like to get your guys' thoughts as well. So we'll start with Ellipsis here, just kind of general thoughts, how you think Shadow will do in the raid, anything you're concerned about or want to bring up?
I think Shadow looks pretty good in the raid, honestly. I think the damage pattern or damage style of doing AoE whilst not losing any single target is something that's going to be quite valuable this tier, because in the fights where there are ads, you kind of don't want to drop any damage on bosses.
Sure.
The single target Shadow has also looked like just generally better than it was in prior tiers, and sort of the priority burst damage, if you can play around Yogg very well, like your ability to snap and just blow something up is really quite high. You just need to be like really timing things well, and kind of you'll have to do cancel auras and set up things to make that really work in like a progression environment, but it is there. Whether you want that to be a thing is kind of up to you.
Sure.
My main concern is just like how much, not necessarily movement, but like getting punted around the room there is in the next tier.
That's not, you just add evokers and pay them off. I don't see what the problem is.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I
there's
mean,
like half the bosses interrupt movement or spell casting
Knock you back.
in
yeah.
some way, in a large
yes,
way.
and I'll just knock you off the platform, which is just like, it feels like they learned absolutely nothing from Razageth.
Yeah. Well, no, they did. They
Absolutely
learned that evokers are our best friends, and they will continue to be our best friends.
Evokers are not our best friends, because evokers are Paladin's best friends.
Yeah, but we can pay them with PI, right? And now we're best friends.
Okay, maybe, but like the fact that the evoker ability that resets movement abilities resets Leap of Faith is just an insult.
I still think that's hilarious. Like the fact that, are we the only ones that we got screwed up like that?
Yes,
It's just us,
yes,
right?
right. What the way I've described it is, if you reset my Leap of Faith, I will grip you back into the mechanic out of spite.
Yeah. So again,
You've given me.
they
that.
rescue us, and we grip the paladin. It's just like Razageth.
I hate it so
That's great.
much. I hate it every single time it's mentioned, and also I don't know how you do that on like it was doable on Razageth because it's a pushback that has like a run against
is
time.
it
and there's,
Magmarax
like,
that has
leeway
the?
against it.
Yeah.
On Magmarax you can't do that. You just go flying.
Magmarax,
across the room.
you can gate every knockback.
Okay,
if you
there-
long
see?
enough. You can also goblin jump
We're
every
fine.
knockback.
No goblin jump. We don't talk. That's
A goblin
Oh,
jump is so
I'm,
good.
I'm,
No, I don't know.
I'm still goblin.
We're
but
team
yeah.
dwarf.
If you can goblin
I'm
Magmarax,
an orc, bro.
that's fine. But yes, there's just a lot of fights where you're getting forcibly having your casting stopped,
Yeah.
I know again we've lost a lot of instant procs, so we're a lot worse at moving around than we used to be.
Yeah, and I want to bring up some other examples. So like Skarn, there's the knockback. And also there's a ton of movement with like switching between sides of the room and you know dotting the ads. And then we have Neltharion. You have to line of sight if you get the mechanic. There's also if you get knocked back into a wall to break the walls and moving from wall sections. There's just a lot of movement, and you're gonna have to optimize your stutter step casting.
So much more than today.
Yeah. I think that the best of the best players will still find a way to optimize through all of this and do very good damage. I'm just very concerned for like the intermediate mythic level players and below.
For sure.
As to how well they're going to adapt to all of this.
Especially they're going to get baited this first week. It's going to be really funny. We're going to be sitting in chat and Discord and stuff. And people are going to be like, why is Surge of Insanity procs for Mind Spike not instant cast? Even though it has the same visual as Surge of Darkness. And you would think it should be instant cast, but it's not.
I don't even really know why they decided to give that a proc indicator, given it doesn't do anything to the rotation at all, and Mindflay Insanity didn't have one either.
The hopium is that they wanted to make it instant cast and they forgot.
That is complete hopium.
Yeah. I'm inhaling it. I need it. That would solve so many problems, though. Just to be clear, like, I don't know. I don't think it would break that much.
Okay. It does change the rotation. I will concede that, but it doesn't change it in a way that Mindflay Insanity didn't already, and that also didn't have a proc. So, I don't know.
Yeah. Anyways. All right, Twicks. Raid thoughts? What do you think? I know you kind of gave a little bit, but yeah. What do you
got? So, there's only two bosses that have a use for Shadow Crash, and it's Zakali Invasion and Forgotten Experiments. Every other boss is pretty much single target, or the ads... Skarn is pretty much the only other fight. The ad is walking around the room. You can't.
I think Skarn, even in Mythic, right? The ads can't be CC'd, right? So
correct.
They're spreading.
So Forgotten Experiments, the debuff when you mass, most people will mass dispel it, and you just burn all the orbs down. Shadow Crash is really good for that. So Zakali Invasion, you know, it's like a Brood Keeper. There's Zakali Invasion never worked. It's probably the worst raid testing I've ever seen.
It was kind of crazy.
But on pull, you kind of just hit the boss for 30 seconds, and then half the raid runs for like 15 seconds straight to the other side and does nothing to hit the one ad that you need to kill.
I think you might also take Shadow Crash Neltharion for the last phase, yeah?
I never
They spawn like a bunch of little aberrations, I think.
Yeah,
I don't know, they've changed that. They've changed that fight a couple of times, and I think the other one we're not sure is Sarkareth, right?
Yeah.
I mean, taking Shadow Crash for the last phase of a mostly single target fight, I don't know.
It depends how important that last phase is compared to the rest of the fight. If that's the actual boss and the rest of it is just waiting for the hard mechanics to start, then yeah, I can see that happening.
Because you're losing, I'm checking, you lose 3,000 DPS to take Shadow Crash.
On 139k, so yeah.
This actor was I wasn't padding too much with special items, so it was 124k DPS versus 121k DPS ish. So like, you don't lose a whole bunch with Shadow Crash, but again, to your point, fair. All right, what are you trying to optimize for, overall or boss damage, right?
Yeah, overall, the thing that actually wipes your raid.
Sorry, Twix, I think I interrupted you. Did you have anything else on that?
Yeah, there's too much movement. For Forgotten Experiments, I will bring this up as well. The deep breath and the bleeds.
Yeah, there's a lot of
bleeds, and moving out after mass dispelling.
Yeah,
it's just my.
If only someone suggested, like Door of Shadows, Reverse Leap of Faith.
Ooh, yeah. If only someone had that in their.
If only someone put that. At least one person.
Yeah, if only they'd mentioned it multiple times over the course of about 8 months as well.
Yep.
Yeah, but Ellipsis, what are your thoughts?
Kind of the same. I'm just kind of like looking at Scale Commander Sarkareth and thinking, there's no way Blizzard make an actually completely single target end boss. It's never going to happen.
You think they're done doing that now, or what?
Part of me like just believes Shadow is always inherently good at end bosses because they're always very complicated, and that means they have ads.
Yeah, sure.
It's just always kind of like a part of my mindset when it comes to Shadow.
But
and
it could be
raids.
like Razageth, right? Where like it does have ads, but only in
Yeah,
like
they're just tuned to be completely irrelevant by the time
Well.
the majority of the player base ever
yeah.
sees them.
So it's hard with tuning, right? But yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean,
don't
like, the
know.
good thing is, depending on where the ads are, I think Shadow's probably better equipped to handle that now than we have been, in the sense that, yeah, you just spec full single target, and you can do just about as much AoE as you would otherwise. Like, that's super valuable, right? It's just
Oh, yeah.
Shadow
Yeah.
Crash is the only
I mean,
weird
it's-
one, I guess, if
yeah.
you need it.
It's also like I feel like if Blizzard managed to make a void-based boss and have the void-based spec not be good at it, there's a bit of a flavor fail there as
That
well.
would be kind of funny.
Like,
Were we good on Azoth? I forget. It's been a while. My memory sucks.
we were not very good on progress, but we were quite
In
good
farm,
when
right?
guilds that were like 350-ish started getting to it. We were
Okay.
pretty good then.
Yeah.
We were very bad until then, though. Like very
I
bad.
blocked it out of my memory. I played Hunter a lot.
That's
yeah.
Orge.
Yeah. Old
But yeah,
man.
I would like to be good on the void-based boss. I would also like to be good on a boss. I would also like to be good this tier because we were so incredibly bad at Razageth.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Fucking Razageth was fine until Shadow Crash didn't come
Oh
up.
my,
for
it is so tilting right now,
bad.
man.
Oh yeah, yep.
You can only get it for
I
2 of the 3
I
ads.
can
and
only
then
do
everything.
only do 2 of these 3 ads, and yeah,
God,
otherwise
it's so
it's just
trash.
awful.
The nerfs really. I read them. I'm like, oh sweet, reclearing will be easier now. And then I did it. I'm like, this is miserable. I don't want to be here. Like, yeah. But yeah, it's 20 seconds now. The problem's solved, right?
Sure.
I mean, I hope so. I really hope that Blizzard I really hope that Shadow has like a decent place in this raid.
Yeah. Okay, I think we covered most of the main topics we wanted to cover. So we can kind of start transitioning loosely into Q&A. If folks have questions they want to drop in chat, we can kind of go nuts there. But yeah, thanks for the chat, gentlemen. This has been awesome. I think did we miss anything? Was there anything big? I think that.
Oh, power infusion. We didn't talk about PI at all.
Man,
What's PI? I don't know. It's fine, right?
I was going to mention PI in relation to Mythic Plus utility
Okay.
and kind of the rise of Warlock and Fire Mage over the past
Evoker.
couple of weeks and going into next
Yep.
tier. Shadow might be more viable or hold some viability in Mythic Plus because of how well it synergizes with those 2 specs because of power infusion.
Well, the pushback I'll give there, and I'm curious on your thoughts. Maybe Twix can go first here. I know you kind of mentioned, Twix, about like you think interrupts aren't as like not I don't want to say important, but maybe there's not as many in season 2. And I think with interrupts and stops being so important, I think that's usually why we only ever saw typically like 1 ranged DPS in a comp.
Yep.
But as Ellipsis is mentioning, these other ranged DPS are the ones that really like power infusion. So do you think double range comps will be more of a thing with that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we were running triple range on PTR. It was
Yeah.
Moonkin is really good. Fire Mage is really good, and
Even
Warlock is really good with
Yeah,
PI.
yeah.
Even
And
Ellie
Ellie
Shaman, I heard, is
Ellie
really good
Shaman
with
is
it.
really, really
Even
good
after
as well.
the nerf?
And
Yeah, Ellie Shaman has this thing where they have a talent where their lightning bolts and chain lightning casts reduce the cooldown of their nature spells by 1 second.
I just thought their tier set nerfed
This
them
one-
into oblivion.
This affects wind shear. So their interrupt is like 5 seconds CD. It's very silly.
oh yeah, that's good.
Yeah, like I think Fire Shadow X, where the X is either a caster or a DH praying they get buffed,
DH got buffed.
is a very they need more than that, but
Sad.
yeah, is a very like strong comp. It's a very strong comp on live at the moment, and given Fire Mage is also rising on PTR even after the little ignite nerf, is like I think Shadow is going to be good because of Fire, or like not good because of Fire, but another reason Shadow might be good is because of Fire.
I think just PI. Like there's so many range specs that work well with it now, right?
Yes, as long as Blizzard continue to make PI part of our utility budget and not our damage budget, then I can see like PI being a very valuable thing for Mythic Plus and continuing to do.
Yeah, it's interesting though because I wouldn't have expected because Shadow Priest Balance Druid, like you're kind of screwing your interrupts a little bit, but I guess you're saying you didn't notice a big deal with it, Twix.
We were
Yeah.
running that in season 1.
Yeah, it's the rise of Prop Paladin being so
okay, sure.
universally
Yeah.
good at handling kicks. Blew open the DPS meta in Mythic Plus so much this season because you don't need double melee to handle.
Yeah, I guess I was living in a world where I assumed Prop Paladin was gonna get dumpstered, but maybe.
I mean, Prop Paladin needs something, but like, I hope it still remains one of the better tanks
It's
because
fun.
it affords so much more flexibility to the rest of your group, and also sack means that specs that are usually made of paper can also play the game as well.
No. Let's see. We got a few questions in here. We didn't talk about embellishments. Either of you guys have thoughts
didn't,
on embellishments next tier? I think we do have a couple new embellishments, some new options. Lariat got nerfed. Any thoughts, guys?
It's a numbers game. Follow the
Yeah,
guide.
they're all just drop in the ocean. They don't affect your gameplay at all. I have no real opinion on any of them.
One thing I want to
Right
bring up,
answer.
the cloak. I'm definitely making
Dude,
the
that thing
cloak.
is awesome,
I'm
man.
making this
Yeah,
shield cloak.
yeah.
It's fucking
Okay,
OP. I'm
okay,
making
yeah.
this shield cloak. I'm gonna be
Okay,
I think
tanky
a lot
as
of
hell.
people should,
Yeah,
to be honest. That thing is OP.
Official endorsement is you make the cloak for progress rating. Absolutely.
I would just say
110%.
progress in general, right? Whether that's keys or rate, like whatever that
Yeah.
is for you, right? That cloak is really nice.
Yeah, the cloak's bust. The cloak's incredibly good. Only caveat being how utterly broken the cloak from the last boss is when you
Well,
get it.
that's an interesting topic.
When
That's an
copium.
interesting topic because I think the cloak, that cloak, is a DPS. It's probably a raid DPS gain, maybe. I don't know because it
Yes.
steals secondaries from other people, right? So
It steals a
It is, it
margin.
is.
It steals a marginal amount of secondaries and gives you a lot
okay,
of them.
well,
Yep.
I think I was looking at the numbers. I think maybe for us, part of it's we kind of got screwed with cloaks this tier. There are the stats on that cloak not great, not what we want, not what we're looking to see. But that cloak actually at what's the top end item level? 457. At
Yeah.
457 item level, it's not even a 1% DPS gain. That cloak ain't that good. Like it is
Wow.
technically like the best cloak that we can get. But
It also doesn't have any stamina on it.
has no stamina on it.
You don't need
The
that.
secondaries
yeah,
aren't great.
you don't need stamina.
Undulating spore cloak on the other hand, Giga Chad.
Yeah, okay. Giga Chad Spore Cloak maybe is just better than everything.
And you can because you can
I
set
can
the
see that
stats on
for
it too.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
and
want to know-
when you get a
I want to know if
upgrade.
Undulating Spore Cloak is going to actually work properly or if it just works like Bulwark.
I don't know. Good question. But I will say a
If it-
small note with the cloak
Bulwark
as
is
well,
still good.
because it heals you when you're below 80%, 90%.
Above 70.
Oh, it's 70.
It's above. I watched. I was watching your video in prep for this.
I don't remember these thresholds, man.
It was like
Okay,
above
so when
70.
you're above
It was
70, you get
and when you and then when you go below 30, it shields you for 110.
yeah. So the reason why I bring that up is because there are a couple things this tier that are hitting us more than we're used, or like where that would be beneficial, right? So like if you decide to run Spore Cloak and Blue Silken Lining, those two kind of play with each other because obviously it would theoretically boost your uptime of
Yeah, they keep you above 30%.
a bit more often, right? And then there's also I don't know, there's like just other damage events that are happening. Obviously we do still have Mental Fortitude, but like File of Corrupting Rage, or there was another one I was thinking
Yeah.
of too. But yeah.
No, I don't have
Trinket.
alchemy. There's no
Trinket
way I can run it.
from Notharian because it bleeds you for 45k every 12
The
seconds.
trinket from
Yeah, trinket's busted.
which
Where an LFR?
which
The
oh, the class trinket. Yes, sorry. You said I was thinking there's so many Nelth things. We have 2 Nelth dungeons,
Yeah,
and we have the boss.
We have,
Yeah.
we have 2
We have
minutes
the
now.
trinket.
It's like last tier when we had the Diurna ring and the ring that was called Diurna.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
For sure.
That confused people a lot.
So yeah, I think for me, I don't know what you guys don't need to say what you're gonna run, but I think I'm gonna run Spore Cloak BSL or Spore Cloak Shadow Flame, depending on what I want, but I haven't quite decided yet. Maybe double BSL if I want
Spore-
a pad.
Spore Cloak Shadow Flame for Prog.
Spore Cloak Shadow Flame for Prog, yeah. But you're not getting BSL uptime on Mythic Prog. It's just not
Oh
happening.
yeah. That's
Well, the thing to keep
impossible.
in mind though, and I think a lot of people a little short-sighted on this sometimes. I'm not saying you guys are, but like uptime on BSL is one good metric, but I think the more important metric is uptime during
on BSL
during your cooldowns. What's the uptime? Because if you're popping cooldowns,
There's VE
you have
during
VE
cooldowns,
going. We have mental fortitude, right? Like,
no, we don't.
huh?
How are you getting mental fortitude?
You drop one of these
It's called
1%,
drop kick.
2% DPS points, whatever.
Ooh.
But now I'm losing the reason to be
Yeah, that's
BSL over Shadowflame because I'm
okay. It's pure
no.
single target. You don't need Link. There you go.
Okay, fine. But then I'm playing Shadowflame anyway because it's better in pure single target already.
So Shadowflame is better in single target if BSL doesn't have full uptime during CDs. Right.
So just tell your raid leader
it's not going to.
Well, yeah, okay. That's the game. But yeah, I agree. Shadowflame for consistency going to be really strong if that's what you want, but I think BSL's there if you want to extend past multi-target and you can game around it. But yeah.
Yeah, understandable. All right, any more questions?
Or anything you guys we didn't catch, you want to shout out? No, not a whole lot of questions today.
Not that I can think of.
You guys ready for the patch? It's kind of scary that it's happening this fast.
It is, yes. We have one question. How are we doing all of this despite like basically talking to a brick wall?
Yeah, are you talking about like with feedback?
There's the feedback. Yeah, it feels like this particular patch cycle has been very different compared to the previous couple.
Yeah, it's so weird, man. Like you can look at the changes that they made and be like, "Yep, I can see directly how this came from feedback." Right? Like a lot of it.
Yes, and
right, like
I can see how. Yeah.
Like Cthulhu got better. People were complaining about the RNG of Cthulhu. They made that with Void Torrent giving you a guaranteed proc, and now Void Torrent can proc it. Like, made that much better. Pathing into N'Zoth and Cthulhu feels better. Pathing into Yogg is more interesting in my opinion. Mind Spike and Mind Flay not coexisting. You know what I mean? Like they made targeted things that make it feel better, right?
Yeah, but it's all sort of very surface level responses.
Agreed. That's why I think like they did some of it, but it doesn't feel complete, I guess.
It feels like it's purely reactionary. It's not actually got any like underlying consistent goal in mind with doing it. It's just reacting to feedback in a very surface level and obvious way. It doesn't really take into account how the spec functions like as a whole unit.
They just wanted to remove buttons. They want to remove button blue and make it simpler. That was their entire goal for it, and I will stand by that.
They removed 2 buttons? They did. I mean, yeah.
They also made it the rotation like more intuitive, simpler.
Yeah. True, very true.
Yeah, they did. But also, we still have say we're playing a fight where we have intermittent AoE in a raid. We still have Void Torrent, Shadow Crash, Mind Games, and Halo as buttons on a 30 to 40 second cooldown. We press on cooldown because they're there.
Just take Divine Star.
That's even worse.
Ooh, I don't know about that.
Like there's just a lot of button for the sake of button within Shadow's kind of talent tree, and I feel like that was what they should have hit instead of Mind Spike versus Mind Flay, or Sear versus Devouring Plague. I think they went about it the wrong way. We still ended up with something that's playable, and I'm happy to keep playing it, but I just feel like the rework just spun its wheels more than anything else.
Yeah, it doesn't feel a whole lot different to me. I think someone was asking, does the rework feel more fun to you guys? And like for me, I mean, parts of it feel marginally better, I guess, but I don't know, not too different. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah.
I find it fun because I can just focus more on other things.
Sure.
Yeah. I like the same reason I liked Survival Hunter in Season 3, Season 4 Shadowlands. Even though it's very simple, you can drag yourself for making such a small mistake, and you can reach perfection of like a perfect DPS much easier. Maybe not easier.
If your Shadow Crash hits.
You can yeah. But it just feels nice knowing you're doing it perfect. Or you make a mistake and you're like, I just lost this much damage, and I know I did, even though it's small. Instead of like,
Yeah.
oh hey, I void torrented right before thundering, I just lost 30% damage.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. Sevash asked a question. Do you think, as someone who is semi-new to Priest, the rotation isn't as intimidating as it once was?
Yeah, it's certainly not as much, right?
It's there's just straight up less.
It's probably the largest improvement across the board is someone that, either is new to the spec or isn't trying to play it at the super highest level or isn't as familiar with it. Much improved, right? That we can say for sure.
The mental budget required to play Shadow is just so much smaller now.
Void Torrent and Insidious Eye are competitive choices to get Cthulhu for Mythic Plus. I think like you'll always take Void Torrent, Malediction, Cthulhu. You lock those suckers in. You're playing those all the time. Taking Insidious Iron Keys, that one is a little harder.
I don't think you can because you will want to get to Idol of
Nizoth is just too good.
Yeah,
you can't. You don't take.
You take Ire. You can. It's you effectively have a choice, right? You either take Idol of Nizoth and the extra point in Screams, or you take Insidious Ire. So like.
Yeah, and then you can. And then once you take Ire, you can like argue that you drop the other point in Screams to that speaker. But
that's
like,
that speaker sucks.
Fair enough.
I actually thought the same thing too, because if you guys have seen the talent tree next patch, at least single target, you see that we dump 1 point into Screams of the Void as like the last thing that we pick, and people are like, well, why don't you just throw that into Mindbender or Death Speaker if you're pathed that way? It's a 2% loss to do that. 1 point in Screams of the Void is 2% better than Death Speaker on heavy movement. It's
it's ridiculous.
It's not Death Speaker. Shadow, and it's not necessarily Death Speaker's fault because it did buff it a lot, but the base
Screams
Shadow or Death damage is
OP.
bad. Also,
like it's the same Screams from a Mind Sear, except now you have like twice as much uptime, or even more maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it actually works. Let's not discount the bug with Screams that we've been having fun with, right?
We have a lot of questions that have all come in all at once.
Which one pops out? What do you got? We'll do a couple more.
Somebody wants to know about optimizing Cthulhu, so let's open that Pandora's box for a moment, shall we?
Yeah, so the TLDR here is, I think most people, once they figure out how to juggle the new spec, if you're talking about optimizing it, a lot of it will come naturally. There is...
Is this mind spiking every certain amount of time?
It's basically saturating the RPPM of Cthulhu to get more procs for not like, obviously if you just sit there and keep hitting mind spike, like that would be obviously the best way to get procs, but we're obviously not doing that. So it's a matter of how do you weave in casts of mind spike specifically to get the most bang for your buck.
Basically it boils down to the most optimal way to generate Cthulhu tentacles is to mind spike once every 3.5 seconds. Which is once every 3 globals with 30% haste, which is why having 30% haste feels so much better than having less than 30% haste.
Shadow likes haste way more. I don't say way more, but more than we did in 10.0.
Shadow, you aggressively wants 30% haste and still likes it more than it did
honestly,
prior.
33%.
Like if you were... Yeah, 33 kind of covers your own like ability to misplay things as well. But yes.
But it's gonna be, people got to learn how to do this. There's 2 big learning curves, I think, for people who've been playing Shadow, is not spamming Devouring Plague as soon as you get enough insanity for it. You could kind of do that on live and get away with it, but now more so, you do need to make sure you're not refreshing Devouring Plague until you need to. So that's part 1, and it kind of plays into part 2, which is yes, Surge of Insanity procs can stack up to 2, but a good Shadow Priest player will be able to weave those in enough to where you're not wasting stacks of that, and you're kind of weaving those in without losing casts of Void Bolt and Mind Blast, things like that. So
Twicks, there's a question here about Mind Soothe. What do you think about Mind Soothe's strength in the next set of dungeons?
Mind Soothe is so fucking good. Holy...
Brackenhide is amazing. I mean,
it's incredible in Brackenhide, yes.
If you have a Disc Priest, no Shadow Priest can do this in Brackenhide. You gotta fucking do damage. But if you're like a Disc Priest, you could literally do the entire first section of Dragon
Oh, like
a single mob. You go straight
the
to the
cage
boss.
RP is
and
what,
just
what you're saying?
Do the cages. Yeah.
True.
Yeah, it's there's one thing
There's a
about
lot. There's a lot less uses though than there were in season 1.
that's I want to talk about Mind Soothe and my very recent and very big hatred for it in Halls of Valor.
What? It's
Twix.
amazing in Halls of
The
Valor.
Sentinels
What
at
do
the
you
end.
mean?
Do you want to have a guess, Twix? How much time is it possible to lose in Halls of Valor purely to Sentinel RNG?
Probably like a minute.
The answer is 2.5 because it happened.
Just run faster, forehead.
It's Mind Soothe.
Just
I don't know.
mines.
So we had Mind Soothe block our way into Herja's room, Mind Soothe block our way out of Herja's room, Mind Soothe block the ability to pull the third pack instantly, Mind Soothe block our ability to enter Fenrir's room, Mind Soothe block our ability to get out after Fenrir's room, Sentinel even,
Nah.
and then Sentinel block our ability to get to Odin's room. It was in the worst position possible every single time, and we lost 2.5 minutes to it and failed the key.
Yeah. I think, but like, to that
Oh.
point though, I think Mind Soothe is great when you have pathing options, right? Like
Yes.
Brackenhide,
Yeah.
It's great
great
going
example.
around.
But I think season 2 dungeons, just like looking at the list, like
It's a lot of
Halls of
corridors.
Infusion, kind of
There's a-
straight. Oldemon, very straight. Neltharis, you have some options.
Tharos, everything's a giant, so you can't really.
Yeah,
do anything.
everything's not actually
right.
soothable.
Yeah.
Freehold and Underrot are good.
Yep.
Halls of Infusion's pretty good.
Freehold was already kind of good for just naturally walking around stuff, though.
Should save you some time, but yeah.
It was still.
Yeah.
Vortex Pinnacle doesn't really
But-
have
yeah.
much or anything.
Yeah, everything Vortex is an elemental. Underrot, the aberrations are just humanoid, so. You just,
Yeah,
Oh, nice. I don't think I've run that one in
There's a few
season 2 yet.
there's a few things you can do.
Yeah, there's a lot of wrong mob types, like the dragons in Halls of Valor are beasts
Right.
instead of
Yeah.
dragons.
But yeah, there's like not much you can use it on that's going to give you like loads of value like there was this tier. There's just like one dungeon where it feels incredibly ridiculous.
All right, we'll do 2 more questions and then we'll call it. Let's see. A lot of people are asking about damage numbers. I think we'll just say right now, tuning is not final. I would still expect to see general class tuning over the next couple weeks still. So hard to really comment too much on balance. So
It's good though.
I mean, as it stands right now, and
It's
I
good
think
right
we'll be in a great spot. So
Yeah. What else have we got? Mental Decay.
ugh, yikes.
There's a question about Mental Decay by extension. What do we think about that talent in general? Is it still performing the role it feels like it was designed to? Because my opinion on that is just a straight up no. It doesn't do anything anymore, really.
Yeah, so the talent on live makes it so if you play normally, you just have to put up your dots once, right? And then you're pretty much good.
Yeah.
Which on single target is still true for the most part. I think you cast like maybe 2 vampiric or 3 vampiric touches
2 or 3.
over the course of a single target fight. So feel like it's
Yeah.
accomplishing its goal there. On AoE, we got that on live because Mental Decay worked with Mind Sear.
Yes.
Obviously, we don't have Mind Sear anymore, and they didn't give it anything. Like, it doesn't work in AoE, right?
Instead, they just made it increase the damage of Mind Flame and Mind Spike by 10%, just to kind of force us towards it.
Yeah. I think it's really hard because I think, like, you could just say, okay, just make Mental Decay work in AoE now. And it's like, okay, well, if you do that, you are effectively pulling a use case out of Void Eruption, because it is one nice part of Void Eruption during cooldowns is you get more of that, or you get that in AoE where you don't have it before. But I do think we should have some options here, whether Mental Decay worked with spirits, and when a spirit hit a target, you got dot extension or something. I don't know.
Yeah. I'd like to see Mental Decay change in a way that definitely does give us some dot extension in AoE. Obviously, maybe not 100% uptime, which is actually difficult because Shadow Crash is already basically 100% uptime already. But like, there's definitely some room for Mental Decay to feel better in AoE, and potentially a way to kind of supplement the spec's ability to do AoE beyond 8 targets.
Yeah, I think they have an opportunity in the future, because I don't think they're going to do it now, to make Shadow Crash, Unfurling Darkness, Mental Decay be nodes that let you choose how you want to manage your dots. Right now, it's kind of in AoE. It's just Shadow Crash, right? But I do think there are tweaks they could make to both Unfurling and Mental Decay to make those points feel like you could reasonably pick them if you wanted a different playstyle of dot management, right?
Yeah. Huxley's asked if Yogg is good because of the tier set. No, Yogg is good just because Yogg is good because they made it scale with everything. It just hits like a freight train now.
Yeah, honestly,
Like-
our tier set, we didn't really talk about it much, but it's kind of
No.
bad.
Yogg hits like 80% harder than it does on live.
Should we talk about a talent build for the new talents, but with old tier?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think I checked this briefly. I really didn't see a whole lot change. The one thing I did notice, Sword Reality wasn't doing as well.
I was just thinking you switch Phantasmal Pathogen for like Dark Evangelism or
Yeah,
something.
I could see that. That's fair. I think
I think it's
the
that
one
as
thing you want to keep in mind, right? The tier set, as far as like what it's optimizing, with both Plague and Apparitions, like you're really not getting very much out of it. 7-8% max single target, and then Mythic Plus, if you average it out just with Travel Time of Spirits, it's like 4 or 5%. It's pretty mid. So because we don't have a super impactful tier set, that also means you don't need to change your build a whole lot. But yeah, I could definitely see the Phantasmal Pathogen guy swapping that out here before you get tier.
Yeah.
Distorted Reality gets a little worse in my opinion with the current tier set, but yeah.
I have a question for you,
Hit me,
Public.
dude.
Because I was looking at Mythic Plus loot tables for next tier.
Spicy.
If you don't raid, what's your second
Yeah,
trinket?
you're screwed, man.
Like there is.
So there's
like,
effectively two problems. The first problem is the raid trinkets are actually all pretty competitive, except for the last boss.
they're all. Yeah, and then the Neltharion trinket is just completely bonkers.
Yeah, the class trinket is so good. Like you want that thing. You everyone in this chat should try to get it. Run it on LFR normal, whatever you can until you get that sucker, and then upgrade it. It's that good.
Yes.
But if you're only running Mythic Plus, you're kind of stuck. I mean, like Spoils is the obvious one. Spoils of Neltharis, because
Double on use Spear Fragment.
you could do double on use with Spoils free Spear Fragment. That is an option.
Yeah. The problem is they only put one non-on use trinket in the entirety of the Mythic Plus season, and it's the idol from Brackenhide Hollow, which is terrible.
The funny part though, and I'm not joking, I'm not making this up, dungeon trinkets are so bad that, and I checked double on use as well, even with Spear Fragment. Kind of okay Mythic Plus, but single target especially, your best two trinkets from not raid and I'm discounting the vault, so I'm assuming the Great Vault, not those eye levels, right? So just what is farmable.
Yeah.
Your two best trinkets are Spoils and Whispers. Whispers?
Whispers?
Yeah. Wait. Man, I'm tired.
What is Whispers?
The season 1
Whispers?
trinket. What is it called? Holy crap. Hello? Icon.
Whispering Target.
Yeah, that
icon. Incarnate Icon. Because I still don't have that, so I'd forgotten it exists.
Yeah,
Imagine
Whispering
having
Incarnate Icon with 0 people having it, just you, and Spoils of Neltharis. That's your two best trinkets if you don't look at raids.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Like Blizzard were incapable of making a trinket that, with gaining 20 item level, wasn't better than 500 crit. Let that sink in for a moment.
Yeah. So yeah, not great. We'll see. Maybe I know they buffed Idol of Decay a few times. Idol of whatever that.
I mean, they need to put another 0 on the end of that thing, I think.
So yeah, raid trinkets are honestly really good. I mean, any raid trinket you get should be pretty competitive. They kind of did a good job, at least with balancing of those guys. There's just like the class trinket is really good.
It's not that Icon is good. It's that all the Mythic Plus trinkets except Spoils are completely unusably terrible.
Yeah, basically. Sailor made a good point. If you have full sockets, the jewel crafting guy should be okay as well in single target.
Maybe, yeah.
But
If you
again,
have
you
full
need full
sockets.
sockets, or that thing is way not as good. I think even like a Dark Moon deck, honestly, like is better than a lot of these.
Oh
Yeah,
man.
it's rough. It's rough.
I think there's definitely just a history now at this point of Blizzard and making real and not being able to make good caster trinkets consistently.
Yeah, and
And it kind of shows that like all the good trinkets in the raid are good because they give us stats. The one that does damage, which is the one from the last boss, is just bad.
well, I think the way I would look at it,
for
honestly,
everyone,
is
though.
these dungeons were designed like when they built these dungeons, at least in the past. I don't know about Dragonflight dungeons as much. They built them like kind of as a package. So they're like, here are all the dungeon trinkets for BFA, or here are all the dungeon trinkets for Legion, and they kind of have a good healthy mix of passive on use stat trinkets, damage trinkets.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But now when we're doing these like Mythic Plus seasons where you're mixing all of those things together, that planning goes out the window, you know?
Yeah, there's just big gaps where things just aren't accounted for, like
Yeah.
the fact there being 0 haste mastery rings in the entirety of Mythic Plus Season 1. Like,
Yeah, or
Oh yeah, that's
yeah, now we have 2. Woohoo. Or you
Yeah.
know, like Vortex Pinnacle like items are really old, like the Legion items. Yeah, so it's like you definitely see some of that, and you know, I know they have done some things to tweak. Like I think they gave the like Freehold and Underrot Azurite pieces are like they added them back as regular
Yep.
pieces, right?
there's a new wand from Neltharian's Lair
Yeah,
because that
didn't have weapons.
because nothing in Legion drop weapons, so they've added
So yeah,
those
they
in.
added some stuff, but like there's still the problem of like the loot tables can be kind of weird. Like if anyone was trying to target loot from Halls of Valor, you know that the loot table is so massive that like
Dude, that took
So it contains 20 items.
forever.
Joy.
yeah. So I think
Yeah.
loot and Mythic Plus and kind of the distribution of types of loot is still going to be a problem that we're going to see. So like unfortunately season 2 you definitely see that as a big problem with trinkets. Like Raid has all the good
Yeah.
ones, but conversely dungeons have all of the good gear. Like the well, at least for now.
Yeah, there's very few good items in the raid that are well itemized. All the haste mastery is just in dungeons. There's like almost nothing in the raid.
We have been told that a lot of the raid items are still placeholder, so we'll see if things get updated. But
Oh, wonderful.
it's not fixed yet, so who knows when we'll see that. So yeah, but yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
9 days, by the way.
What?
9
9 days. Yep.
Yeah, 9 days. Is time reaching Talon not good for season 2? No, it's terrible. It's a 2-minute 30 on use trinket.
2 minute 30. It also
It's
lasts
what?
a really weird duration, right?
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's like 15 seconds. No, 20 seconds.
Yeah, you're gonna spend a very, very long time spamming keys for everything except trinkets. So it's the complete opposite of what you did
Yeah.
in season
So
1.
we're not a 3-minute spec, so it's already worse. And then, like,
Yep.
would you hold Void Eruption 30 seconds and hold Void Eruption PI for 30? No, you wouldn't do that. So it really sucks there.
Yeah.
And then Dark Ascension can't
you
really
wouldn't.
play it either, because it's a
Yep.
2-minute 30-second. Yeah, I don't know.
Yep. And also, it doesn't even last 20 seconds. So what it actually ends up doing is like nuking last 5 seconds of your PI.
Yeah. Also, it's got base haste on it, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
base haste, not base intellect, so it scales slower
And
than
it gets
everything else.
DR'd.
And so if you, yeah, if you wanted a good long cooldown on use trinket, you just use Iridius fragment.
3 minutes, I think.
But you also don't
You
want
don't
that
want
either.
that.
So
Yeah, don't. Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
No.
Nope.
you genuinely don't go into Mythic Plus for trinkets. They're all terrible.
Yeah, except for Nelthars.
Except spoils.
Yeah.
Yeah, just go to Nelthar
Lots,
as well.
are there any 2-minute 30 specs? Fire and Arcane Mage can be
DK sometimes.
intervals that line up well with 230 because their cooldowns are based on how much they're casting.
Yeah.
But they don't really line up well naturally with any specs actual cooldowns. They make no sense.
Now, when your raid leader makes you PI the DK every 3 minutes, you just
Cringe.
you run every Iridius fragment.
Yeah, then you're very sad. But like, actually, hang on, question. When we get to the point where we're doing fights where we can actually just delay PI and delay our cooldowns because we're not getting an extra use, does Iridius fragment end up being good then? Because you can use it on 1 and 3, on 0 and 3.
It's possible. It's pretty far behind right now, so it'd have to make up quite a lot.
If a fight's like 340, do we use it then?
I don't know off the top of my head. I'm looking at it right now, and a 447 fragment is 5,000 DPS behind the next highest trinket. So
Yeah, but it's also being used outside of cooldowns.
no, we just hold it, I think. But yeah, it's got a bit to make up. It's possible. I don't think it'd be that significant though.
Yeah, it's just very niche. But like, I wondered if it was potential. Like, maybe there's maybe if you get that in your vault, you're not actually completely sad about
Maybe.
it. Maybe you just wait till farm and it's actually okay. But it's probably not still good
Yeah,
anyway.
maybe I'll pick it on week
There you go,
20.
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
honestly, just pick Neltharian's Call to Suffering and pick any other raid trinket, and you'll be in good shape. Or spoils.
I mean, Neltharian's Call Suffering is about as good as 2 trinkets put together. Is about as good as 2 dungeon trinkets put
Yep.
together. Genuinely.
Yep. Sure is, bud. All right, we will wrap it up there. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. It was lovely having you guys on. I'll kind of go around. Ellipsis,
Yeah.
anything any last minute stuff you want to say or shout out before we close out?
Not really, no.
Sweet. Check out your Wowhead guide soon, TM.
I mean, I'm currently still working on like Wowhead stuff at the moment.
There you go.
So
All right, Twix. Where can people find you? Anything to shout out or any last minute stuff?
Yeah. Twitch.tv/Twicks TV.
Awesome.
I'll be streaming every day after 10.1 comes out.
Hell yeah, man. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining, everybody. If you guys didn't, I should have said this at the top. Dang it, I forgot. I was too sleepy. I have started uploading these podcasts to Spotify as well. So if you prefer listening to them on not YouTube or not Twitch, they are on Spotify. Just search Shadowword Podcast there. If you're listening to this on Spotify, thanks. And yeah, again, thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you next time on the other side of 10.1. Peace.
Yep.
Yep.
See you. Bye.